Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you catch this. And a lot has transpired since my last video. Um, you've had situation over Israel and Palestine and all that stuff, the Gaza Strip and all that, and of course the media is always telling us which side we're supposed to be on. Why don't you study your Bible and find out which side you're supposed to be on? But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just here to talk about government solutions to the government problem that they create. And in my first year of high school, we had a governor here in Texas named Mark White, and he passed a bill called House Bill 72. And House Bill 72 stated that if an athlete did not maintain passing grades, they would not be allowed to participate in any extracurricular activities, and not just athletes, any students. That was, and because that encompassed band, cheerleading, all that other stuff like that. But you couldn't participate in any extracurricular activities. I lost a lot of teammates that year and ended up playing a different position for the rest of the football season when that took place. And that just goes to show you that we look to government for everything, because you didn't need the governor to come in and tell you that your kids shouldn't be participating in extracurricular activities if they're not passing their classes. I mean, and the coaches didn't care either, because the coaches should have never allowed them to be actively involved in sports if they weren't passing their classes. And I remember playing little league ball, and those coaches actually cared about us as students first, because every Friday when we went to practice, and in all honesty, when I was in elementary school, there really was no such thing as progress reports. But our coaches wanted us to bring them a progress report every Friday so they could make sure we were passing. And if you had anything less than a C on your progress report, you had to put your suit up. You couldn't come back until that grade got to C or better. But we're seeing now on a worldwide scale a modified version of House Bill 72, or was House Bill 72 the modified version? What we're dealing with right now is no jab, no play. House Bill 72 is called no pass, no play. So what we're dealing with now is no jab, no pay. And that means if you don't comply with draconian demands and measures, you will basically be disregarded from society. No jab, no pay means no eat. No jab, um, no pay means no place to live. And enslaved minds will always reject proper leadership, because that particular mindset has no clue that it has been enslaved. For me personally, every time I've heard truth that was contradictory to everything I had previously been taught or previously learned, it's made me uncomfortable, but it's never made me upset and never made me deaf. And kind of reminds me of, I heard a guy tell a story about a scientist was doing an experiment with a flea, and he put a flea in a jar and told the flea to jump, and the flea jumped. And so he noted on his pad, when you tell a flea to jump, he jumps. So he took the flea and cut off a couple of his legs, and he told the flea to jump. The flea jumped. He takes that and noted in his pad, flea jumped, cut off two of his legs. So he cut off two more of the flea's legs. Tell the flea to jump, the flea jumps. He notes it in his pad, when you cut off four of the flea's legs, the flea jumps. So he takes the flea and he cuts off all the flea's legs. And he tells the flea jump, and the flea doesn't move. And so he notes in his pad, he said, when you cut off all the flea's legs, the flea gets hard of hearing. And so that's how a lot of people in society are. They're hard of hearing. And when you're the type of person who's comfortable, it's easy to lull you to sleep. I try not to get mentally um, comfortable ever. I'm reading every day. I'm listening to something every day. I'm watching something every day so I can learn. I mean, every day. A day does not pass where I haven't opened a book, I haven't watched a video, or I've listened to some type of audio that's going to help me. Not one day. Even when I was in the hospital, I had my book at the hospital. I had my laptop at the hospital because I wanted to make sure I'm still getting information because hospitals are a negative place. Henry David Thoreau said that rather than love, than money, than time, not time, fame, give me truth. And sadly, most people in society want the fame and money because they believe money and fame can buy or attract love. And normally you find out years down the road that the fame and the money only brought them part-time lovers. Now, I remember old R&B song or blues song, part-time lover and full-time fool. But have you ever heard of something called camp law? CAMP? And camp law actually states that people going to their death must be deceived to the very end. Did you hear that? They must be deceived to the very end. And what are we dealing with right now? There was actually a report that was written in the 90s, I believe it was the 90s, called Global Report 2000. And in that report, it stated that the goal is to reduce the United States population by 100 million people and the world population by 3 billion people by the year 2050. Um, I actually think they've actually accelerated that program, to be honest with you, but that's just me. Now, this report was signed and approved by the peanut former president, Jimmy Carter. Now, how many of you guys have heard of Niccolo Machiavelli? Because Machiavelli, and if you heard any rap music when Tupac was living, you know, he talked about and rapped about Machiavelli a lot. But Machiavelli said that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. And what are we seeing? The system has worked for centuries to divide us by race, by weight, by color, by job, by income, by neighborhoods, by the type of car you drive, by the type of house you live in, by religion, by politics, by injustice. I mean, there are quite a few more. I just can't think of all of them right now because I created a list and wrote it down some years back, and I just can't think of it all right now. But you know, the amazing thing to me is in less than a year, they managed to even separate us from our family, our close friends, and our co-workers to the point where we don't even want them in our presence if they haven't taken a system solution. We are now more divided than we've ever been from one another because the system told you that your loved ones are a threat to your existence. I was in a store not too long ago, leaving therapy, and my wife sent me a text message and asked me to stop at the store before I got home because she had went to the store and they didn't have something. And a black woman asked me, had I got the government solution? Why is the standard black conversation started off now with, have you got the government solution? Every strange black person that I've met since the solution became available don't even know me, and the first thing out of their mouth is, have you got your solution yet? And as we talked, she said she had taken her first solution and she trusts God, but she started experiencing some pains that she's never had in her entire life after taking her solution. So she wasn't going to take her second solution. Why didn't she trust God beforehand, before she took the first solution? You have a lot of people walking around here with the government solution like it's a badge of honor. The true threat to you is actually the ones who told you who your enemies should be. You know what all this says to me? It means people's faith is in short supply. If we've been using common sense, which comes from God, and we allow our family members and friends to pressure us into getting something that has not been properly tested or properly proven to work, that means we have allowed those people to become our idols. The trials for these solutions are not scheduled to be completed until January 27, 2023, February 2023, and December 2023. We're still basically 2 years out for this stuff to even be finished with their trials. And then going forward, one of the manufacturers have said you're going to need booster shots every 6 to 12 months. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself and your life and the life of your spouse and the life of your kids for that? Something that hasn't even been proven? Y'all didn't even study the clinical trial that they put out where they said they had over 40,000 people in it, and then they came back and said they had a 90% plus success rate, but they didn't tell y'all that 90+% success rate was based on 8 people out of the 40,000. There was a guy named Lysander Spooner. He left centuries ago. And Spooner said that those who are capable of tyranny are capable of perjury to sustain it. The less responsible we are as a people, the more we need an oppressor. We are around here practically begging the government to make everybody comply to government demands. And more than any other group, black folks are getting upset with the governors who are saying you need your freedom back. Many schools are requiring the vaccine in order to return to their campuses. My sister sent me an email yesterday. The university she attended said you can't come back if you haven't got that solution. She said the alumni is speaking out against it, but the president doesn't hear nothing. I guess he's kind of like that flea. You need to cut off all his legs, because he's deaf. But see, the only way these schools are going to come off of that too, the kids and their parents have to remove themselves from it. And you know what they're going to do if they remove themselves physically? They figured, well, they'll just go online and we'll just charge them more to go online. You need to totally have your kids remove themselves from them campuses and the online courses altogether. Your kids need to be going to a college that allows for freedom, not forced compliance. Many jobs are now requiring it. Some grocery store chains want you to have it. Families won't let other family members visit them at home if they haven't had it. The government has actually created a 2-tier system, and you say and do nothing. Your politicians say and do nothing. And you think the people that sound an alarm are the problem. When has the United States government ever done anything to benefit the people? Spooner also said this: a man's natural rights are his own against the whole world, and any infringement of them is equally a crime, whether committed by one man or millions. Whether committed by one man calling himself a robber, or by millions calling themselves a government. Aldous Huxley wrote in his book, A Brave New World, that, how did he say it, a really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and the army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. And I apologize for that. I guess I should have wrote that one down. But, when you read a lot, sometimes you think you can pull that stuff out off your head. But often the truth is in front of your face, but your eyes and your heart are so full of lies that you can't see it. Some of you are so willing to comply that you will do whatever the system requires of you to be obedient. You miss going on cruises, so you're going to take the government solution to get back to normal. Your kids miss their companions at school, so you would take the government solution and send them back as fast as you can, not realizing that the homeschool movement has exploded during these last 15 months. Many parents want the kids out of the house because they have an increase in their grocery budget. Well, you didn't have to buy school clothes this year. You didn't have to buy school supplies this year. All that's done online. You don't have to drive them back and forth to school if they don't ride public transportation or the school bus. So you saved all that money. So why are you complaining that you have to feed the kids you birthed? You want to be around your family, so you will cater to their demands if you want to see them. But they have taken a government solution. You need the money from the job, so you're going to bow down and take the solution from the government in order to participate in the work environment. You love your grocery store so much that you would take the government solution to be able to shop and breathe fresh air. The thing that God gave us freely. There's a lot of stuff out there saying your carbon dioxide levels are not affected. Well, I'm going to tell you from personal experience. Yes, it is. It showed up in my blood work, my lab work. Aesop said this: better to starve free than be a fat slave. A lot of people in society have got caught up in fear-based solutions. Real solutions are not based in fear. Charles Montague said, the tyranny of a prince and an oligarchy is not so dangerous to the public welfare as the apathy of a citizen in a democracy. Over in Proverbs 29:25, it says, fear and intimidation is a trap that holds you back. But when you place your confidence in the Lord, you will be seated in the high places. Or another translation say, people are trapped by their fear of others. Is that not true right now? Those who trust in the Lord or trust the Lord are secure. Now, like I said, it just depends on which version you read, because the site I use to look at different versions has like 56, 57 versions of it. And so, it just depends on which one I want to use. But we have allowed the problem creators to make us scared of each other. As I stated earlier. Let me say this again for the kids in the back of the class. The people who create the problems cannot be the same ones who offer the solutions. They have made us totally scared to be in the presence of each other. I mean, a woman named Leela Watson said, if you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And that's all the people that are doing that's trying to sound an alarm to you. They're trying to say, hey, let's work together. Don't come to help me. We in this thing together. We are not each other's enemy. The enemy is telling us that we're each other's enemy. But we can't see it. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have attacked me for talking about some of the stuff I'm talking about. And it's really hard for me to sit there and hear black people protect the system after our entire existence has been complaining about the system. Just doesn't make sense to me. When we start believing that altruism is more important than personal responsibility and personal morality, we have a serious problem. Should you be loyal or obedient to a group at the expense of the well-being of yourself and your family? They call that tribalism. Look it up. There's a pastor I follow who told his congregation that he'd be taking the government solution so he can travel again, and he has no fear because he trusts in the Lord. See how that sounds? Well, if you trust in the Lord so much, why are you taking the government solution when God is supposed to be your source? And that's what you've been teaching for years. He said he is not telling his congregation to take the solution. However, he did say in order to protect the elderly, the children, and the pregnant mothers in the church, if you don't take the solution from the government, he asks that you don't attend live services anymore. He wants you to watch service from your home on your computer. So he's contradicting himself. I'm not telling you to do it, but if you don't do it, you can't come in my presence. You can't come in my church. So in essence, if you want to come to church, you got to do it, even though, but he can protect himself and say, well, I never told him to do it. Y'all see how this stuff all messed up? You can't sit there and tell people the Lord is your protector, the Lord is your father, the Lord is my shepherd. You can't sit there and say all of this stuff and then say, I'm going to trust the government because God told me to trust the government. Y'all better read Romans 13 again and again and again so you can really understand what Romans 13 is talking about. You can't sit there. Well, he's a black pastor. You know, I listen to pastors from all backgrounds, all races, all creeds, all colors, if the message is good. But one thing I've said about black folks is the reason we can't really follow God anymore is because our pastors have told us to look to government instead of God. But then they want to get up in the pulpit on Sundays and talk about God. But at the same time, if you pay attention to some of the messages, they're telling you to look to government. So government has become our God as a people. And see, this type of stuff makes perfect sense to people who can't think for themselves. The guy who posted the video was in total agreement with what the pastor was saying. Isn't it amazing that many of your churches were closed for almost an entire year, having to conduct services online, but they opened up so people could stop by and get the government solution to the problem the government created. So worshiping God was not allowed in these churches, but taking a government solution was encouraged at these same places. Does that even make sense to you? The pastor at the church service we attend online said when the government solution became available, he and his wife would be the first ones in line. Guess what I came across 2 weeks after he said that? An article that said religious leaders will be used to push the government solution to the congregation to the problem that the government created. One of y'all most prominent black pastors up there out of Dallas and a few others met with Dr. Ouchie. And he and those other leaders, so-called religious leaders, were encouraging people to get the government solution. How many times do I have to tell you if your church gives you a tax form at the end of the year, your church is a government corporation? If something is so good for us, do we really have to be bribed to use it? What do you think all of these incentives are for people to take the government solution? They've offered free Krispy Kreme donuts, and people were posting their selfies with their donut in their card. They've offered Starbucks coffee. Scholarships have been offered to high schoolers who prove they've taken a solution. The state of Ohio has offered $1 million for up to 5 people. They're going to do a drawing a week for 5 weeks, with one winner being picked for 5 weeks for $1 million. And I guarantee you the winners of those prizes are going to be somebody the government people already know. Free beer has been offered. Movie popcorn has been offered. Days off work have been offered. And a lot of people needed off days anyway after they got the solution because they were in so much pain and disarray and hurting and shivering and all of this other stuff breaking out in rashes and hives and all of this stuff that they had to take off work anyway. So your job offering you a few days off work wasn't no deal. You needed that anyway. They offer steak dinners. They offer cash rewards. Some companies increase the hourly pay on jobs. Some companies offered $100 bonds to children who get it. Uh, they offered marijuana for potheads. One store offered $100 store credit to their employees. They're gonna write this stuff off. Another store offered $120 gift card to their employees. Some places offer the extra hours of pay and vacation time. Now, if something is so good for you, do you think somebody would have to do something like that to convince you that it's good for you? If it's good for you, you know it's good for you. It's kind of like, um, bleach or ammonia is used to clean. But you also have enough common sense to know that neither one of those are good for drinking. Yeah, they put a little bit of chlorine bleach in your what they call it, the water treatment facilities, but they can't put a heavy concentration of chlorine in there because it'd be like drinking water from a swimming pool. You don't drink water from a swimming pool. So your common sense tells you that drinking bleach or ammonia is not good for you. Your common sense tells you you can't pour water in your gas tank of your car to drive it. That's common sense. You don't need to be bribed for somebody to tell you, hey man, don't pour that bottle of water in your gas tank. You don't need a bribe for somebody to say, hey, don't you drink that cup of ammonia. Because common sense tells you that you don't need to do that. You shouldn't do that. So if you got to get bribed to do something, every time somebody has to be bribed for something, that means it's always wrong. You're not going to find anything now or historically where somebody's been bribed and the outcome hasn't been bad in the end. A survey was done, and over 80% of the people said they would get the hit if they were offered money to take the hit. Well, I'm going to give you some verses from one of the books that was removed from the Bible. And you can still find Bibles with some of these books in them. And if you don't, you can buy books with the books in them separate from the Bible. Just depends how you want to. Or you can get them online. And I want you to notice I didn't say missing books of the Bible. They were never missing. They just removed and hid. And maybe I'll do a video one day on a lot of the things I found, which led me to understand why those books were actually removed. Now, these verses are from the book of Sirach, Sirach. Gifts and bribes make even the wise blind to the truth and prevent them from being honest in their criticism. That's chapter 20, verse 29. Don't rely on dishonest wealth. It will do you no good on that day of disaster. That's chapter 5, verse 8. When an educated person hears something that shows insight, it stimulates his mind and leads him on to other ideas. But when someone who is satisfied with ignorance hears it, he won't like it and will forget it as soon as he can. That's chapter 21, verse 15. And y'all know whenever you read it in the context of scripture, when it says he, that means he and she, just so you know, because you got man and then you got womb man, which is called woman. Womb man, which is woman. So man, he means man and woman. Money is a trap for those who are fascinated by it, a trap that every fool falls into. That's chapter 31, verse 7. The Lord created medicines from the earth, and a sensible person would not hesitate to use them. That's chapter 38 and verse 4. Now, some of you heard me talk a little bit about my health journey. And I had to start doing natural stuff to restore everything that the medical establishment caused to get out of balance and out of whack. Why are holistic practitioners being silenced in all of this? Tacitus said, if you would know who controls you, you see who you may not criticize. Now, why did I mention that from Tacitus? Because what you might not have known is in the last stimulus package that was put out by Joe Biden, Congress actually inserted a bill, H.R. 133. And what does H.R. 133 consist of? Let me read it to you. I just got a little quick synopsis. In H.R. 133, Congress gave the Federal Trade Commission supreme authority to target, arrest, and fine anyone who doesn't follow the government's narrative on lockdowns, masks, quarantines, and vaccines. Anyone who promotes a healthy immune system can now be charged and fined for the criminal act of helping people treat and overcome respiratory infection. Did you hear that? You can literally be punished now for trying to show people the proper way to heal their own bodies. The mere fact that people are willing to accept payment to take the solution shows that money is a trap, as was stated in Sirach 31:7. And I mean, chapter 21 and 15 speaks volumes. I didn't say you were ignorant if you ignored what is right in front of your face. The book of Sirach did. There's a guy I used to follow for a while, Coach Dave. Coach Dave is a pastor. And once Facebook disabled my first account, I kind of lost communication and connection with Coach Dave. And I came across something he said sometime back, and I think on my other YouTube channel, I might be subscribed to Coach Dave. But this is what Coach Dave said. And, you know, I'm getting ready to get close to wrapping up. And but Coach Dave said, Christians are being submitted to death. We are taught to submit. Submit to ungodly laws. Submit to ungodly politicians. Submit to ungodly court decisions. Submit to ungodly government regulations. Submit our children to soul-killing government education. Submit to government theft. Submit to the trampling of the individual conscience. Submit to the shackles of overburdensome public debt. Submit our children to children's services. Jesus will save us. No wonder our men aren't men anymore. The pastors are taking the fight out of them. We are taught to submit to the wrong things. Blind submission to any man or system is not healthy or wise. It takes the fight out of you. It does to the will what Novocaine does to pain. It deadens the natural response. Submission to sinful authority is exactly how we got in this mess in America. It started in the church. Looking the other way at sin in the camp led to more sin. Mercy without judgment emboldened others. The "we are all sinners" mantra justified sinful behavior. As the Christians became more polluted, the church became more polluted. Obedience to ungodly authority led to acceptance of ungodly behavior. The sin-sick church led to a sin-sick world. Disobedience to the Bible led to disobedience to the Constitution. Disobedience to the Constitution led to tyrannical government. Tyrannical government led to the fleecing of the sheep. We are following the government and their solutions with blinders on, just like sheep led to the slaughter. Those are some powerful words by Coach Dave. Do you realize that the scenery only changes for the sheep at the front of the herd? The rest of the sheep see the same thing. You know, I'm not a chess player, but the pawn is the most numerous piece in the game of chess, and in most circumstances, also the weakest. We are dealing with just what Michael Elner said we are dealing with. Elner said, the world we live in, just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. Governments destroy freedom. The major media destroys information. And religion destroys spirituality. Let me tell you something. We're never going to outgrow warfare. We're going to have to learn how to fight. Fyodor Dostoevsky, I think I said his name right, said, in the end, they will lay their freedom at our feet and say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. Carl Sagan said that one of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. And folks, we're in the biggest bamboozle I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it hurts me that many people are not able or just not willing to see it. Sadly, many people don't want to see it because they're loyal to their abusers. I guarantee you, if Donald Trump was still in the White House and he told many of you to take that government solution, almost 100% of you would have rejected it.